comics, kind of okay, but you know, you're wondering why they're not doing so hot. I have my two very favorite and very most important tips to give to you today. Killer opening. So you're ready to step up your comic making game and get a little more creative with the process. Maybe you found yourself in a slump, or maybe you're trying to get all of the information you can before you start writing your comic. In this video, I'm going to give you my top favorite tips I use daily when drawing my comics. These tips are best suited for visual storytelling and are very easy to implement into your everyday artwork. Alright, I know it's pretty easy to be lazy when you have a deadline to meet with your comic, but I promise you that if you follow these tips, it will visually make your comic more beautiful as well as easy to understand and follow as a viewer. My first tip is knowing how to pose your characters. Knowing how to pose a character, or OC, is the first step in telling a story creatively. It gives the viewers a very distinct visual cue on what might be happening or who the character is as a person or what they might be thinking or feeling. A popular term to think of is show don't tell, and while this mainly refers to writing, it goes hand in hand with art. Today I want to show you the baby steps in how I've learned to effectively pose my characters for art, storyboards, comics, and character sheets. The first thing you want to think about while posing your character is what type of character are they? Are they shy, dismissive, outgoing? Knowing who your characters are is the first step in character posing. Because you want to effectively put their mannerisms on paper and have people immediately understand who your characters are, it's important to have a strong understanding of your character's basic personality. Let's say you have a character with a very bubbly and outgoing personality. Happy, cheerful characters tend to be a little bit less reserved or guarded around others, so their limbs tend to be as far away from their core as possible. If they just received a baked good as a gift, would they react by throwing their arms out in excitement or maybe jumping up and down with joy? If they posed for a picture, what would they do? Throw their arms up and away from their core and tilt their chin up maybe? Let's take another characteristic for example. Let's say we have a very shy and reserved character. Shy people tend to have a more guarded personality about them while still being friendly. A common stance artists tend to use is keeping the arms of a shy character a lot more closer to the body of themselves. If your shy character is getting embarrassed or unwanted attention, then have them cover their mouths or even faces for extreme situations. I had a very shy friend growing up, and she tended to turn away from unwanted attention, or at least cover her mouth. Usually by keeping limbs and even your chin tucked closer to your core is a very good way to emulate a character that is a lot less open than others. Having a very stagnant character also really helps in presenting that unwanted or just standoffishness that a lot of people do try to emulate with their characters as well. It's really easy to forget about character posing, especially if it's not something you tend to do or if you haven't really dipped your toes into the water yet. A helpful activity I like to do is think about what my characters would do in certain mundane situations. Imagine your character is sitting down to eat lunch with some friends. How do they act? Did your characters grow up with siblings? Maybe they scarf down their food faster than an only child would, outstretching their arms to their food or even blocking it away from everyone else. Maybe they tend to daydream, so they'll look away from the group out a window or even put their head in their hands while doing so. Are your characters more open and relaxed? Perhaps they put their feet on the table or the seat they're sitting on. Okay. Let's say your characters are in a field. Are they nervous about any potential bugs on the floor? If so, keep their arms close to their chest and blocked off from any potential threat of creepy crawlies. Just because they're open with others might not mean they're open with everything. Maybe they don't care about getting dirty, so they're as close as they can to the ground. Those are just some of the basic things I think about when developing and posing a character. By keeping the character's personality in mind, it does make posing much easier. Another thing to keep in mind is your character's posture. Think about any friends you might have and how they carry themselves in correlation with their personalities. I was always a super tall kid growing up, and while I wasn't shy, being a head taller than all my friends was embarrassing to me, so in all of my elementary and middle school pictures, I slouched to be able to meet my friend's height. Meanwhile, my friend who is barely 5 feet stands with their back as straight as possible to look taller as well as more intimidating to others. Characters that tend to slouch might have low self-esteem or might be shy or embarrassed about how they present themselves to others, while characters that stand straight with arms away from them might come across as more open or strong. By knowing the type of character you have and knowing their personality and reactions to actions and settings, you can really help eliminate stiffness in your artwork. Rather than just having a character standing straight up with their hands at their side, you can more effectively pose your character to be able to tell a story. My next tip is understanding how to utilize color in your comics. Color is a really good tool to use when telling your story. I see a lot of artists tend to skip over. Different colors tend to have different meanings, and you can use those meanings to subliminally express to your audience who your characters are and how they act in situations without even having to tell your readers exactly what's going on. While colors seem like a very mundane part of art, having a very specific color palette really helps accentuate the type of character your character is. Let's take Mugen from Samurai Champloo for example. Even if you have never seen the show, what can you infer just by looking at him and his color palette? The first thing you notice about his color palette is that he wears a huge red overshirt throughout most of the show. Does he look aggressive, passionate, angry? You would be correct about all of these assumptions because the color red has a subliminal representation for these things as well as many others. Alright, let's take one of your characters for example. Say you have a quiet character. Maybe they're dignified or maybe they're just shy. Putting them in dark colors or even blue tones will help visually tell your readers or viewer what your characters are all about. This is a huge factor when I find myself designing my characters and choosing a specific color palette that matches their characteristics. This is also a really strong reason why a lot of shows and movies and comics tend to keep characters in the same clothes, alongside with the fact that it's easier and cheaper to keep character designs to an absolute minimum. Having the same color palette, or at least having the colors grow and change with the character, is a huge aid for visual storytelling. Take Jim from Treasure Planet for example. His character design starts out with him wearing a big black coat, closing him off to the people around him. Black can have many meanings, a few of them being sadness and darkness, and it is a very solitile color. I guess solitile is a word. When we first meet Jim, these traits are very true to his personality. Then as the film continues, we see him move from the black coat to a brown shirt. Brown is usually used to symbolize a secureness in your surroundings, which happens when we start to see Jim and Long John Silver grow together and Jim becomes comfortable in the journey they are on. And as the journey comes to an end, we see his third and final transition to a white suit, a common symbol for peacefulness. His journey has come to an end and he is content with the person he is and his surroundings. Take a look in your closet. What color of clothing do you tend to wear the most? My closet, for example, has a ton of colorful and patterned items. This is a pretty good indicator that I'm a very extroverted person, or at the very least, I am open with others with the amount of eye-catching items there would be. Meanwhile, another person I live with strictly wears black and very dull colors they are more comfortable in. In a basic personality sense, they are more quiet and introverted. This is a really basic example and breaks down our wardrobes in the most primary way possible. Along with color meanings and color characteristics, you can take this a step further when you have two characters. Let's say you have two characters in love. You can put them in a similar color scheme to symbolize their closeness, or alternatively, you can put them in corresponding colors to show a unity in their bond despite their differences. You can do that with a group of friends, siblings, or any type of close relationship. If you have characters that don't like each other, put them in mismatching colors. I did this with my very first comic to help aid readers in sending a message that something was off between the pair, even though there wasn't much proof of that shown at the point of the story. Let's take a character that you want to stand out from a crowd. Try putting them in a color that no one else will have. This will separate them from the crowd and visually cue to your audience that this character is more important, whether they be the protagonist or the antagonist. That rule doesn't transfer as well depending on the story you're telling. You do want to keep your color schemes in line with the story you're telling. Let's say you have a story about medieval England and, you know, your main character is a peasant trying to work their way up through the classes. They're not going to start out wearing the color purple because purple usually is a color of royalty or just poshness. It's a very interesting color, so you know you're not going to want to put them in colors that just won't make sense to the story, but you know You just keep it in line with the story and it should be fine. Understanding the color wheel can really help you in your color choices. Even if you don't want to learn color meanings, if you follow the color wheel and match characters together, through that, it will greatly benefit your visual storytelling. Those are my two most important and fundamental tips for easier storytelling. I can almost guarantee that when you implement specific character posing as well as a more intent color palette, your comics will be a step above the rest. When you take the time to do these two simple things, they will improve the quality of your comics greatly. Thank you so much for watching. If you liked what you saw, feel free to subscribe or leave a like or a comment. And if you want to see more from me, I will be making more videos soon. Alright, bye.